Liar. Everywhere. On netrootsradio.com. David Waldman. Kagro. In the morning. Now, here's David Waldman.
Hey, good morning, everybody. How you doing? It is Monday, December 7th, 2020, Pearl Harbor Day, and more importantly, I guess, for our current purposes, the day before Safe Harbor Day. All the harbors are having their days this week. Safe Harbor Day, not Safe Arbor Day. It's a different. I hope you have a Safe Harbor Day, but you have some time to worry about how you can secure your location for Arbor Day yet. So don't worry about that. But Safe Harbor Day, in case you somehow missed the discussion, more or less every day, certainly every time Armando comes on. This is the day set forth, I guess, under the non-presidential precedent of Bush v. Gore, whereupon, or tomorrow, I guess, would be the day, whereupon, if states have selected their electors, and designated who has won their electoral votes by the previously prescribed method as described or as adopted by the state legislature, if they've gone through their process, then they get the benefit of having gone through that process. You get to name your electors, and nobody will step in and undo your work. I'm not a close student of the subject, but basically, if you've gotten your work done properly by this point, and I guess by tomorrow, and have locked in your electoral votes and who those electors are going to be, thanks to their designation by the respective campaigns, then you're in good shape, and the courts aren't going to help intervene to undo it. However, if by some chance some problem or another, or some flood of lawsuits, if they had been successful perhaps, has kept you from designating the winner of your electoral votes in your state, then in that case, it's possible to go to emergency procedures and come up with some other method of selecting, which is, I guess, was the hope of the elite strike force, suicide squad, whatever we're calling them these days, of Trump lawyers, if they are in fact lawyers. By the way, being picked off one at a time. As we know, Sidney Powell kicked out of the elite strike force sometime, was it last week or maybe at the end of the prior week? So she's been out for some time. Rudy Giuliani is, being shown the door to this mortal realm, possibly. He's got COVID-19, as in Georgetown Hospital / Total Landscaping, as other people have suggested. I'm sure he'll be getting all the best care. Now, the question in everybody's mind is whether or not Donald Trump will call up the hospital and insist that they give him the Regeneron miracle cure treatment. Although it may be too late for him, I'm not 100% certain about that. But we did read last week that the Regeneron stuff is apparently really designed for and most effective on people in the earliest stages of the onset of the illness, or I guess people who have been exposed to the illness and have then, tested positive shortly thereafter. But apparently Giuliani was feeling symptoms. He's been feeling ill since at least Friday. We got the news, I think, yesterday that he has been admitted to the landscaping ward. And so he was feeling symptoms then. I guess the people construct the backwards timelines and say he was probably contagious either at the time or just after the time that he was making all these appearances at all the fake hearings around the country and may have infected everybody. The Arizona state legislature, as I understand it, has shut down operations for a week out of an abundance of caution, they say. But because Rudy Giuliani brought his typhoid there and spread it all over everybody, and now they all have to wait and see whether they're sick too. That's not even getting to Jenna Ellis, who I don't think is sick at the moment. Well, she's maybe perhaps mentally ill is a possibility. Some big profiles on her over the weekend, basically showing you what you might have suspected earlier. You probably thought at some point, boy, she doesn't seem like a regular lawyer or maybe even a lawyer at all. And I have definitely found myself asking, should I be asking, is this person actually like licensed to practice law? Is she really that bad, or am I overstating the case? And now it turns out, yeah, basically she's just about not there. I believe she actually passed she graduated somewhere, passed the bar, I think in Colorado, but does not have a current bar membership anywhere. She hasn't kept current. Don't know, and she'd have to pass again in order to get current. But there were some questions about what legal job she had actually held, and as it turns out, basically the upshot of the profile I saw in the New York Times and a send-up of it, I guess we'll say, in the Daily Mail, was that essentially she was defending people in traffic court for a little while, and then moved from there basically to senior legal advisor to the White House. So it's been a hell of a ride. Much more to get to today. Greg Dworkin has a large raft of stories. Why don't we bring Greg in so that I can turn my attention to how to turn off the now accidentally alighted flashlight on my phone before it dies. Good morning, Greg. How are you?
Hey, good morning. Well, at least should be illuminating, right? So,
yes, right.
Traffic Court was an actual TV series.
Oh, well. So she may have been on the TV.
Yeah, 1957 through 1959.
So
as it turns out,
anyway.
There's Night Court. There's all this other stuff she could have done because, after all,
right.
Trump really goes for these.
King Arthur's Court.
Yeah,
you're from Connecticut.
Court of public opinion.
Right.
Trump goes for this appearance on TV stuff. The reality TV kind of thing. So I'm not sure. Now I'm not a lawyer. I certainly don't claim to play one on the internet. Armando's a real lawyer. He actually does this for a living. Adam Bonin's a real lawyer. He's been arguing in front of the Supreme Court on occasion as part of his day job. And Adam points out the latest, which is overnight, that the Michigan State Supreme Court dismissed the Kraken lawsuit in Michigan. And he writes, some sentences are so good you want to take them out in the nearest Frogurt place and get all toppings you want and put them on.
All right.
So now, I am not a lawyer. I don't know how to pronounce all this legalese stuff.
Oh, my, okay.
Right? Does latches rhyme latkes?
Like latchkey kids.
Latchkey, latches.
Latches.
Oh, okay.
Laches.
So basically, as my non-lawyer brain understands this, latches is when, in the law, you not only wait too long to bring the suit, but you're actually deliberately trying to screw it up so that you hurt the other side by waiting to the last minute.
Yeah, you will.
And there's no good reason to accept it if that's what you're doing. And that's apparently what the Michigan State Supreme Court said.
Yeah.
Indeed, they said, when there is no reasonable explanation for what you're doing, there can be no true justification for what you're doing. I threw in the for what you're doing for those non-lawyer people who try to understand what this is saying.
What are you doing? Right?
But basically, there's no persuasive explanation as to why you waited so long to file this suit.
It's not right. You
can't even tell us why you waited this long.
Right, because there's no real reason. You're just trying to screw people up. Yeah, you'll be penalized for it, and it's a good thing. And it doesn't get brought up a lot usually because lawyers they know that it's coming, and they say I have to file by a certain time, and I'll do it.
Well, again, so I guess again, my non-legal brain is saying this is beyond, let's say, a statute of limitations sort of thing. It isn't just that you waited too long. It's that you have no justification for waiting this long. And in fact, there's some suggestion here that maybe you're being malignant and detrimental to the opposition by waiting this long.
Yeah. Right.
Like okay, I'm filing 3 seconds before the election is certified. You have to stop it. I waited this long because now that you stop it, the opposition doesn't really have any way to appeal.
Yes. Basically that's it. I mean, yes.
So you waited to the last minute
in
order to bolster your reasoning that I should stop things.
Yeah.
You did that on purpose.
Right, now it's an emergency, right? Yeah, and if
you made an
emergency,
we're
talking about
to the last minute,
right? And if it's a voting procedure, well, that the procedure was adopted months, if not years ago. Why no objection until you're about to be certified the loser? That's basically it. It's an equitable doctrine. It's a question of basic fairness, and you just say, all right, well, if this, inures to your benefit and puts the other side, under your thumb because you've gone out of your way to do the wrong thing, we'll take note of that and just say no to you. So, equitable doctrine. I'll pass around links to, well, if you like, to latches in Wikipedia, but also equitable concepts as well. It's good reading.
Well, I'm just trying to understand it because basically it looks like the Michigan Supreme Court is saying, look, this is enough. We're not even having this.
Yeah,
you guys just have to stop. You're being stupid.
There's been a lot of that going around in Michigan, and if I saw the same ruling from last night, they're also kind of, and I wasn't the Supreme Court, I don't think, but I was looking at a federal court, federal district court ruling, but again saying, you're stating requests for relief that this court can't give you. You're just like suing for, I don't know what. I'd like to feel better, Your Honor, and also, is there any way you could take a look at this thing on my back here?
I see. That's why I'm not a lawyer. I don't know where it was from.
Okay.
I just know they did it.
Well, right. I think it was probably that I had seen was a federal district court. Everyone was enjoying it. That they were asking.
Well, basically, they have no standing. So let's go back to first principles here, and that is that Typhoid Rudy had been in Georgia just the other day without a mask, trying to argue that Georgia should also throw everything out and do it.
They did not want to do that either.
And the legislature should reconvene magically, even though there's no provision for this, call themselves back into session and simply award Georgia to Trump. And that's the plan. Okay. And, once again, overnight, Brian Kemp, the governor, said, no, we're not doing this. I have no legal way to call the legislature back, and they're not coming back, and we're not doing this. And by the way, tomorrow's Safe Harbor Day, so, you're out of luck, guys. But while Rudy was arguing this, of course, he was infecting all the Republicans in Georgia. So I'm sorry, you all have COVID and you can't vote in January.
Oh, yeah, that's true. You have to stay home.
You have to stay home.
And as you know, mail ballots don't work, so don't even ask for one.
Right. So, last night was also twin debates. Reverend Warnock debated Kelly Loeffler, who was depicted on Twitter as being a robot who can simply repeat points like Marco Rubio does in a presidential primary. And John Ossoff did one better and debated an empty podium because Perdue refused to show up. And so you had the spectacle of the moderator saying, well, I'm going to ask John Ossoff a question. I would normally turn to the podium here and ask Senator Perdue, but he's not here. So I'm going to ask John Ossoff a question. What would you have asked Senator Perdue had he been here?
Okay.
And Ossoff seriously looked at the camera and said, well, had he been here,
where are you?
I would have asked him
here? Yes.
Why you are so afraid to debate. Is it because you are not very good at debates, or is it because you're afraid you're going to incriminate yourself? Either way, that's not good, and that disqualifies you from being a senator. So let's go on. And next question.
All right.
It was actually very well done.
Interesting.
Because, we saw what happens when Clint Eastwood debates a chair. I mean, it's not simple to get up there and make a credible case when, the whole thing looks kind of stupid.
He's an actor. Yeah.
And Ossoff did an excellent job. He actually did better than Eastwood.
Okay. I was wondering about that because they made it sound like that was sort of a rule of the debate somehow. And I thought, what a weird
it's like
rule.
Monty Python,
What would you ask him if he
one guy's a philosopher and the other guy's a boxer, and let's put him in the ring and see what happens.
All right. Well, it was an interesting situation. I saw a couple of clips also of the Loeffler debate, which also she was absent from. I mean, she was there, or a cardboard cutout of her was there, apparently. This was not a great showing. So maybe Perdue wasn't so bad off. It was just a coin toss. Either show up and don't say anything worthwhile, or just don't show up. And we'll try one of these.
If you don't show up, it looks bad. If you do show up, it looks worse. So that, I think, is where we stand. Of course, we don't know what's going to wind up happening in Georgia. And this is all part of the bigger picture. Trump was there over the weekend trying to rally people behind himself. And also, by the way, I'll mention the senators. Whether that did any good or not is still up for debate. We won't know until the election. People on the ground say, well, Trump people complain, but they'll go out and vote. But it's an off, election. That is to say, it's a special. It's not during the presidential race. Trump's name is not on the ticket. And what's the turnout going to be? Meanwhile, the Democrats, Stacey Abrams, and everyone else are still continuing to organize and do their jobs. And so we really don't know what's going to happen, but that's certainly going to be able to affect how Biden sets his agenda, which is making the media really crazy because they want to write in advance exactly what's going to happen so they could tell you what insiders they are. And they don't know because they don't know what the Constitution of the Senate's going to be yet.
Right. Well, yes. Basically.
Yeah, so that's what's going on.
Okay.
It's quite interesting. I have a clip I sent you. I had to ask an empty podium a question, and it's a several minute runoff debate discussion here, and it was really, really well done. Now, Kurt Bardella, former Republican operative, has a nice piece that I tried to stick to a little bit in the pundit roundup when I put it together. And the title of his piece is "Get Ready to Change the Channel and Stop Giving Donald Trump the Attention He Craves."
Okay.
I'm part of this problem, he says, but my point is that we have an opportunity to do better, learn from the past, ignore Trump, but get back to reality because Trump hates it when you ignore him.
Yes.
But the counterpiece to that is from the Bulwark from A.B. Stoddard. What if Trump is trying to break the GOP? The future of the Republican Party is an endless series of loyalty tests and Trump family vendettas. Good luck. And her point is, in the confusion, Republicans seem not to have noticed the new dynamic which is emerging. The combination of stop the steal ragers in fear of the silent Republican establishment types are mother's milk to Trump. Angry and afraid people fighting over him is the very top of his hierarchy of needs. It's his version of self-actualization, and while he may be forced to give up the office of the presidency, he'll not give up being the center of this storm. Republicans don't seem capable of understanding where this eventually leads. Let me spell it out. Donald Trump's going to destroy your party. Not because he wants to or even because he's trying to, but because the destruction of the GOP will be required in order to fill his psychological needs. And that's when he goes on a rhino hunt, tweeting about a Washington Post report revealing only 25 Republicans in Congress of 249 queried would admit Joe Biden had won the election.
Right.
And Trump says, oh, my gosh, 25. I'm surprised there's so many.
High?
We've just begun the fight. Please send me a list of these 25. I read the fake news Washington Post as little as possible, so I don't know who they are, he says.
Right. Oh, yes. The print is too small for him. So he says, send me a list of them so I can have them enlarged and printed out and I can read it.
But an actual example between Governor Doug Ducey of Arizona and Governor Brian Kemp of Georgia, who, by the way, is still going after, the Democrat Party couldn't be happier. They fight harder against us than do the radical left Dems. If they were with us, we would have already won both Arizona and Georgia.
What?
And then the Republican legislature let down America, tweets Typhoid Rudy. I'm ashamed of them. They completely misled the president and me. All of us Republicans let them know what we think of them.
Okay.
And what does Giuliani mean when he says Republicans? That label doesn't mean much these days. After all, Trump wasn't a Republican before he ran for president, says ABC.
Yeah, but...
Right.
Okay.
So Jared Kushner bragged to Bob Woodward that Trump basically did a full hostile takeover of the Republican Party.
Okay.
Because of attitude. They like his attitude. They don't really care about policy. Well, nobody cares about policy. Right?
Yeah.
Trump said at the rally, I like cucumbers. And now cucumbers are like really hot and selling.
Are they? That'd be great.
That literally happened. Right.
So he did say that. I don't know if there's stock in cucumbers, but.
Well, you'll see. It's a cult.
Okay.
If he tells them to eat the cucumber instead of drink the Kool-Aid, they will eat the cucumber. I have
an idea what they should do with the cucumbers.
Right. Well, that's another story altogether. So we're not going to go what you should do with the cucumber or where you should place it. What we are going to say is that if you have this situation where, we should stop paying attention to Trump, but Trump won't allow the Republicans to stop paying attention to Trump. They find themselves in a double bind. They're screwed if they do, they're screwed if they don't. And that's what Loeffler and Perdue are finding in Georgia. And because that is such an important agenda setter for what happens from this point onward, it's just really, really worthwhile keeping an eye on what's going on in Georgia. As goes Georgia, so goes the country right now.
I guess so. I mean, if they manage to hold it together somehow. I don't know what it means for the further destruction of the party, but Yeah, I mean, it'll be a real disaster in the Senate, certainly. But
well, you have Brian Kemp, who's up for re-election in 2 years.
Yes.
Does he get primaried?
Do
you try to take on a sitting guy? Do you run Doug Collins against him? Do you try to split the party that way? What if Stacey Abrams runs again with a solid Democratic base who's united, and you have a divided Republican Party? And remember, even though there was probably cheating going on, we accept the results of the election because we're not Republicans. Cheating in the sense of kicking people off the voting rolls that probably belong there. But whatever. Officially, Brian Kemp is a governor. He won. Stacey Abrams lost, but it was a very close election. Yeah. And let's assume that Stacey Abrams keeps the Democrats united and the Republicans are divided. How is that going to help their chances? So if that's the result, then you could argue, yeah. I mean, it's not like the Republican Party will go away. It'll never go away.
Yeah, well, that's the part I'm waiting for.
Any more that Joe McCarthyism went away. But, you can stamp it out for years. Like they did in California.
Well, I hope so. We have to wait a little while to see what happens there. It would be great to have an early indication of that in the Senate races. I have my doubts about whether or not people on the Republican side are really actually thinking, okay, well, when push comes to shove, I won't vote. I will boycott because it's all rigged. I don't.
Yeah, but we had this discussion before the presidential election.
Yeah.
How many Republicans really won't vote for Trump? You had excellent turnout. It wasn't enough because a small number actually voted for Biden, and that's all you need.
Yeah.
And of course, you have to bring out your own base. You can't do it based on Republican switchers alone. That only happened in Alabama. And when Roy Moore was running, you're not going to see one of those.
Now, more likely to switch Republican votes, I understand anyway, and this makes more sense to me. Less so than people boycotting, which doesn't make a great deal of sense to me, but these people don't make sense. But I do understand it's catching on, the campaigning that they're doing against Perdue and Loeffler, and it's really beginning to sink in with people. They've really not been paying attention to being senators. They've been paying attention to their stock trades more than anything else.
And that's why Ossoff made the reference about indicting himself, because he knew he'd be asked about that.
Yeah.
And so, you have senators who aren't very good, and you have two excellent candidates, and one side is motivated to come out and the other not so much.
Yeah.
And so everybody assumes, well, they're just going to win anyway. I don't know that. You don't know that. Nobody knows that. We don't know what the turnout's going to be. We don't know how bad COVID's going to be at that point, because it's pretty bad right now.
Maybe they'll get it. Who knows?
Again, Rudy's down there trying to make sure that everybody in the Republican Party has COVID, by the way, there was flatulence involved here too.
Oh,
and I saw a lot of medical speculation about whether you can spread COVID that way. I assume he wears underpants. It's kind of like wearing a mask, I suppose.
I really don't know. Maybe
you may think it's too much information, but these are the questions that real people want to know. I sat next to him. He farted. Do I need to get tested?
Well,
yes, you do.
I guess. I mean, you probably need to get tested no matter whether he farted or not. But I suppose that could make it worse. I don't know how they.
Yeah, but he farted twice, and I was next to him. Should I go to the top of the line?
You should go to the top of the building and see how high it is, and think about jumping. If you had to sit next to Rudy Giuliani through the rest of that, okay. Well, I hadn't thought about transmitting the virus that way, but I suppose it's possible. I understand they're checking, sewage levels.
This is the internet, It'd be irresponsible not to speculate. So.
Yeah, right. Well, right. I'm glad that we brought that up, because that's horrible and disgusting and fun. I hadn't thought about that angle. That's fine.
Yeah, well, I figured you appreciate it.
Yes.
So.
Right.
The New York Times.
All right.
Other pieces here have a story, and I don't have it right at my fingertips, but I saw it this morning about which areas had the biggest swings toward Biden and which areas had the biggest swings toward Trump.
Okay.
And it was interesting that one of the big swings toward Biden was here in Connecticut, in the New London area.
Oh.
And for those of you not familiar with Connecticut geography, New London's in the eastern part of the state on the coast, and there's three important institutions that are within just a few miles of each other there. One is Conn College, Connecticut College, which is, safely a bastion of liberalism, the way many college campuses are. But within walking distance is the Air Force Academy. Excuse me, the Coast Guard Academy.
A short walk to Colorado.
Coast Guard Academy and the Groton Sub Base.
All right. Yeah,
so they're talking about a military installation and military-oriented people here, and they swung to Biden, and that goes back to Trump calling all of them a bunch of losers.
Yeah, I guessed that was going to be bad.
Right. So where do you see it actually having? Remember all those people. Well, it's really not going to have an effect. You read this stuff, but in the end, they're going to vote.
I think I feared that.
Didn't. Actually, they didn't. So when you talk about what's happening in Georgia, I'm talking about what's happening in New London.
I'll take that.
And when you push people off at the margins in a close race, it matters. Mm-hmm. Now, if you're going to win,
that's clear.
Like Tuberville in Alabama by lots, then it doesn't matter. Okay. But when you have a close election, everything matters.
Yeah. All right, I'll believe that.
Keep it up, Georgia, and we'll see how that goes. Biggest swings toward Trump: Laredo, Texas; McAllen, Texas; Brownsville, Texas. We've talked about that. The diverse Latino, Hispanic vote, and the fact that if you're dependent upon the oil industry and you're more concerned about the huge amounts of unemployment going on, we see this in California now. Just turn on the evening news and talk about the stay-at-home orders in various places where the COVID virus is overflowing the ICUs. And you'll have restaurant people saying, I can't do this. If I close down, I'll lose my business. Well, if you don't close down, people are going to die.
Yes.
Now, this is a tough dilemma. It's not easy. You could say, okay, obviously, we who don't live there and aren't dependent upon that restaurant for food, for our family, you should close down. But it's a true dilemma that people are having here, and you can understand why there's so much resistance to it. It's just that people aren't talking about it openly. That's the choice. So there are trade-offs. We have to talk about those trade-offs.
Yeah, I guess so. I mean, one of the ways to talk about
Texas,
it is,
unemployment one.
You could help us, right? We could help you survive the shutdown. Of course, you also lose your business if you die. So
it requires leadership.
Yeah. We should get one of those. Hi, it's me, David Waldman, your host for Kagro in the Morning, and I've learned that I either need to update these announcements more often or stop saying that the announcements are brand new. What's not new is that this message, too, is a call for your support in keeping the Kagro in the Morning show on the air. My thanks go out to all of you who do support the show through your donations. The stats say that Kagro in the Morning fans download our program about 2,000 times each weekday, but our donors make up only about 8% of our daily listeners. Patreon.com, Patreon.com, makes it simple to make easy, secure, recurring monthly contributions to support our show. Patreon.com/KagroX gets you straight to our donation page. If we're helping keep you sane during the Trump era, consider what that's worth. $1 a day? 50 cents? One thin dime? We do about 20 shows a month, so pick a number, do the math, and head to patreon.com/KagroX to let us know. Thanks again, everyone, for all your support. Welcome back now to the Kagro in the Morning show here on Netroots Radio. We're searching around for the various New York Times stories to which we were referring, but
there was this nice Nick Confessori tweet where he gives the actual print front page of the New York Times, leading with California to reimpose strict lockdowns. State grapples with shortfalls as aid expires. Lawmakers inch toward deal in aid packaging. Cyber attacks are discovered on vaccine supply network. For black women, a long fight to change how Georgia voted. And after 2 merciless hurricanes, rising fear of new refugee crisis. And Nick Confessori makes the point that you don't see the word Trump. Now, you noted that Armando had said on the other side that, Trump's responsible for a lot of this stuff, even if you don't use the word.
Right.
But I don't mind seeing the word not used. That's, after all, a theme this morning. He hates not seeing his name in the paper. So good. Let him hate it.
All right.
I don't really care. Do you?
No. I might should put that on a jacket or something.
Well, it's been my theme this morning.
Oh, okay.
No, Trump
good.
Says that he's going to do counter programming on January 20th. He's going to have Air Force One and all this.
No, he's not.
This big stuff about leaving the White House. He's going to make a big reality show of it. And, of course, all presidents do that. Nixon leaving the White House was a big reality show, too. But, he can leave and he can walk to Mar-a-Lago for all I care. I don't really care. I mean, that's who cares? Let him walk to Bedminster if he can't walk all the way to Mar-a-Lago.
Yeah, I'm trying
Frankly,
to think.
I don't even think he can walk to the end of that White House property.
That's true. But yeah, I'm trying to think. I guess Well, the Air Force One thing, I mean, it won't be Air Force One when it leaves because, blah, blah, blah. Technically, the call sign of the plane won't be.
It is when it lands, but it isn't when it leaves. I think
or something like
that the people on the plane who run the plane ought to just be very professional. And instead of having stairs, they should have a ramp.
Right. I'd say drop a rope ladder.
You want to leave by what used to be called Air Force One? Just go up the ramp, dude.
You should get one of those carnival rope ladders that you have to climb.
My grandmother
and ring the bell.
can do it. Why don't you just go up the ramp? It's easy. It's a little steeper than normal, but hey, so what? You can make the ramp like 8 miles long and make it now.
Right.
Or you can do like a 1 foot ramp. And
see.
It's up to you, dude. You do it.
Yeah, I'm thinking
a little steep. It's not our problem. We
just
can do
like the carnival games. Have you seen those with the rope ladders? You have to climb to ring the bell, but they're over a little, like a little airbag if you fall off because you can't make it. It's very hard. I would love to see him bouncing off of one of those things. Right. But yeah, I was wondering. I guess normally the procedure is, the two presidents, they meet beforehand. Apparently they're supposed to have tea in the White House or something. And then they go to the inauguration. They pass, the peaceful transfer of power is memorialized. And then I think as a courtesy, the new president loans what would be Air Force One if he were on board it to the outgoing president to make his departure. The helicopter and then the plane, and they fly off. And Trump says he's not going to the inauguration. Trump says he's not inviting Biden over for tea or anything else in the White House.
You can take the plane, but here's the bill.
I wonder either that or just like, what? It's tradition, but obviously you don't enjoy traditions. So, it's not like you're without a plane. You got your own plane. Go.
Oh, I'm sorry. You wanted to go to Mar-a-Lago? This plane is going to Guantanamo.
Yeah, right.
They told him mid-flight.
I don't know. The president ordered it.
You can't change the direction of the plane. We're like,
we're Air Force officers.
Miles up here. We're going to land in Guantanamo, and that's where you're going to live the next 3 years. I'm sorry.
That's right. Or, we put you in the cargo hold instead of in a seat. I don't know. Any of those things could happen.
The upshot is the one that the places that had the biggest swings toward and against Trump. So I found that. So here it is at the bottom of the list here.
Very good.
Education was a key dividing line. Other things mattered too. 4 key swings against Trump: Waukesha, Madison, Wisconsin, Atlanta, and Phoenix.
All right.
Places that mattered.
Yeah.
Wisconsin, Georgia, and Arizona. And then specific places. Biggest swings against Trump: Colorado Springs, Fort Collins, Colorado. Fort Collins, get that? Fort.
Yeah, and Colorado Springs, that is the Air Force Academy, isn't it?
Yeah.
All right.
Denver.
Okay.
And then Norwich, New London, Connecticut is 4th. We talked about that.
All right. Broncos don't like them, and the Air Force doesn't like them.
Kentucky, Portland, Maine. Thank you, Bill.
Hey.
All right.
Squirrels.
Delaware, Baltimore, Buffalo.
Large cities.
Omaha.
What do you know? It's almost as if you campaign against places
Huntsville,
where there are
Alabama.
large numbers of people, you lose.
Military base there too, I believe.
Where?
Huntsville, Alabama.
Huntsville. I don't know. Maybe. Sounds like. Why not? Sure.
Why not? Sounds
Put
like
3 or 4 of them in there. Yeah. Okay.
Poughkeepsie, New York.
What about them? They've a swing toward
right
Biden?
next to where FDR used to have a place.
Okay. It's Vassar Colleges did it.
So conservative-leaning Kentucky posted one of the bigger anti-Trump shifts. That's probably the suburbs near Cincinnati. And what about the big swing in the Huntsville area and Deep Red, Alabama? Fast-growing places with brighter economic prospects correlated with higher number of people with college degrees and more jobs in professional tech and creative field move toward Biden. And there's a highly educated workforce in Huntsville for the aerospace industry.
Oh, yes. We, I have some vague recollection of having relocated a large chunk of it there not that long ago. Okay, well, good. They brought their votes with them.
So
I'm going to look that up.
Yeah, but it's education, is the big dividing line there. And, of course, this gets to exactly how you try to approach the post-Trump era, which is the Biden reconciliation versus the base revenge, kind of dichotomy here. there's a Democratic push, according to CNN, to continue to investigate Trump post his leaving office.
Oh, good. Yes, well,
it won't stop, and that's fine. It doesn't mean Biden has to be involved. That's Congress. Okay. And at the same time,
it's in the roundup. I'm going to go back to that.
Yeah, well, it's in there's the list there. I have it.
Okay. I will find it. If it's on the list, I can get it.
It's the last thing before the call started.
Okay.
To help you find it, and just above when Georgia State Senate hearing featuring maskless Rudy, typhoid Rudy. So there it is. And I think that's an important thing. The other thing that we have to decide is, of course, the big story, which is going to be the big story for the next month, is just how bad things are getting with the coronavirus. And here's a story from two experts, Greg Gonsalves included, Joshua Barocas, opinion contributors in USA Today. Make it easier to stay safe from COVID. Don't shame people. Don't punish people. Familiar theme for those who listen to me. Try to include them. Right?
Yes.
Give them incentives to wear masks. Don't tell them they're stupid for not wearing masks.
Okay.
Pay them to wear a mask. Give them prizes. Do whatever you need to do to make it easier to be inclusive, not exclusive.
And this is easier to do in person than it is over the computer. If you're really face-to-face with somebody, very rarely, I think, do most people say, hey, stupid, and start that way.
You have a local brewery. Don't punish people for hosting indoor parties. Pay for breweries to sponsor outdoor parties. Make the activities something that you can do, because you can't stop human interaction. That's like telling college kids not to party.
I can. Yeah.
Well, you can tell them, but that doesn't mean they're going to stop.
Right.
So host the parties and make them outdoors.
Human interaction?
Right? People used to do these after proms at high school, host non-alcoholic parties afterwards. Allow people to come, make people come, let them have fun. Because if you don't do that, they're going to have their brewski parties, and people are going to get hurt and get killed drunk driving.
I will point out,
that's the same concept.
I will point out, we'll have to just to be clear about this thing, the most popular post-prom type activity where they get the kids together in order to get them in one place and have them avoid alcohol and various other bad behaviors, they are lock-ins. And we're against locking anything now. So it's a lock-in without being locked in, I guess.
No, make them want to be inside.
Right.
That's the point.
Well, I don't know.
Then lock
the kids, we lock them.
But, throw away the key. But that's not the point, really. The
it's
point
fun
is
to be locked when you're a kid somehow. I don't know.
Right. Anyway.
The doctrine of latches. We lock the latches on them. And then, and now the segment is done. I've tied it all together.
Right. There you go.
Now you can do anything
from beginning to end. So I think it's a good concept. A reorienting concept. Again, what the people that you have to punish and make fun of are people like Kristi Noem, who fled her state, which is filled with a coronavirus. I think she went to Georgia to stand for the senators during Trump's rally, or thereabouts. But she wasn't in South Dakota; she was in Georgia.
Right. Yes. Well,
I think she was. I think she was the designated spin doctor for the Republicans after one of the debates, or something along those lines. But, she was in a place where she didn't really belong.
Yes.
When her whole state is dying off.
Yeah. Well, she'll get it and die if she stays there. So she's
she may be bringing it to Georgia. She and Rudy may be, on a mission.
What if she gave it to him? That'd be funny.
Yeah. Well. So that's basically the news is what's going on. That's your summary for the very chaotic weekend.
All right.
The important stories, I think, are the continued failure of the Trump effort to overturn the election, the spread of coronavirus, Rudy getting sick, and, the fact that Safe Harbor Day is tomorrow.
Yeah. Okay. I mean, all very important pieces of the puzzle here. I may have to go back and see. One of the things you mentioned was about paying the breweries to have outdoor. What do we mean? Are we governmental assistance?
We're talking about subsidizing the bars to stay open. This is one way to do it.
Okay.
Not only stay open, but you get even more money if you have your activity outdoors.
That would be all right. It's cold, but maybe in Georgia it would work.
You want your brewskis cold.
Oh yeah, right. That's true too. All right. Well, we should just pay for coats for people. Couldn't we just do that?
Something. So,
right.
by the way, this new Gallup poll finding the president-elect Joe Biden has a 55% favorable rating.
Hey.
So Joe Biden's already more popular than Trump ever was.
Yeah, that's true. He never made it to 50 or even close. Really, I think mid-40s was about as high as he got.
When I tweeted that, some killjoy pointed out, well, it's traditional for president-elects to become popular. Well, the point is the exception, dude.
Yeah, right. I mean, a return to tradition. Everybody asked for that.
It's a tradition. It's Trump that is the exception. He was never popular. That's why he lost.
Yeah.
Hello.
It's kind of a cell phone. Well, it's traditional to like the president. Yeah. And also, this guy never had that. Right? So, what does
by
that
the
mean?
way, just keep an eye on the, now that we're there,
Maverick. Yeah.
the coronavirus vaccine story.
Oh, okay. Yes.
Okay. What's going to happen is
Please.
that we're starting to get the meetings that will help with emergency emergency use authorization.
Oh.
And it's non-youth who probably get it first. But there's a couple of things we need to see there. That part is like it's going to roll out. It's going to be a big story, but it's going to roll out as expected. What is unexpected is that Trump promised millions of vaccines that won't in fact be available. It's only going to be a trickle in the beginning. Or as Max Booth puts it, once again, Trump administration overpromises and underdelivers.
Yes.
Operation Warp Speed's a good thing, but it promised a flood of COVID vaccine, and lower than anticipated allocations have spawned widespread confusion and concern in states. Bill in Portland, Maine pointed out Maine's going to get half of what they were promised, at least in the beginning. Eventually it'll catch up, but it's going to be a trickle at first. Healthcare workers and the very elderly and those in healthcare settings are likely to be top of list to get it first. We don't know yet because the ACIP, the Advisory Committee on Immunization Practices, hasn't told the HHS group and the CDC exactly what their advisory piece is going to be yet. In that vein, however,
hurry up.
The Biden administration is starting to announce their healthcare team, which is important. The new CDC director is currently infectious disease chief at Mass General.
Okay.
From Harvard. And the HHS secretary is going to be Xavier Becerra. Very high-ranking Latino.
Right.
To go along with Homeland Security. So the two groups that were most affected by Trump's underperformance in regard to, let's say, humanity, something of a correction there with high-level Latinos going to be present both at the Department of Homeland Security and HHS.
Good.
That's good.
Yes, it is good, and Becerra is a good guy, generally speaking. Favorably inclined to healthcare reform.
Interesting, though, because if that's true,
what?
That Becerra turns out to be HHS director.
Yes, okay.
Remember, Republicans are claiming to block everything.
Yeah.
Okay. But if he leaves, that means that Gavin Newsom, the governor of California, is going to have a number of decisions to make about who replaces who.
Right, musical chairs. Good.
One of his senators, for example, I hear, also has a job.
One of his who?
One of the California senators.
Oh, senators. The actual one of our senators. Yes.
Yeah, one of his senators.
From the United
so
States.
He's going to have to replace Kamala Harris.
Mm-hmm.
Right. Well, who gets the job?
Me.
Well, it's a little bit of jockeying going on there. But if he also has a few other positions to offer.
Oh, right. Yeah, that makes it easier.
It makes it easier because then he can balance a little bit. What if more California politicians turn out to be on the Biden team? That actually helps the governor because then he has all these empty slots he can help fill and balance all the competing demands.
He should sell them like Rod Blagojevich did.
I'm just saying.
Okay. Well, they are golden, these things.
Right. So I said Joe Biden will nominate Xavier Becerra, the Attorney General of California, to be the next HHS secretary.
Yeah.
And Michael Shear from Politico, is he?
I don't know.
White House correspondent from the New York Times.
New York Times.
CNN political analysis and co-author of Border Wars. Just points out it's a victory for the Congressional Hispanic Caucus. And my first thought is, yeah, but, and by the way, Becerra helped start that.
Yeah.
But in my mind, it was also a victory for Gavin Newsom, because now his job is just that much easier.
Yeah, okay. He'll take it, I am sure. A lot of pressure, but okay. All right. We'll watch the dominoes. I don't know. They fall. So let's say musical chairs. That's a better image, I think, than dominoes falling in California. It'll have a chain reaction up and down the system, I'm sure. People will move into new positions. It'll be good.
Right.
Okay.
Anyway, so
Yes.
That's the story.
All right.
And
Yeah, we'll
be
continue on
back
that
on
vaccine
Wednesday, and
front.
we'll see what else we can come up with.
All right.
But there's always something.
That's good. We'll keep it that way. Trump will try, and we'll try to keep our attention off of him and as much as possible anyway. But he's a jerk, and he has a lot of jerks working for him. So
Yeah, I will end with this observation, which everybody's made. I've made too, and that is that you have to understand that Republican silence. Remember, only 25 out of the elected in Washington were willing to say Biden's president, president-elect technically, but the next president. And Greg Sargent made this point, and Amanda Carpenter made this point in Bulwark as well. It isn't that Republicans now have this dilemma of what to do about Trump not willing to concede. They're in on it. They're fine with it. They have no problem with it. It's what they want too. So instead of giving them excuses about them being in a quandary, right, recognize the fact that they're all in on this. They would love to have Trump be able to steal the election. They'd be fine with it. There's not a single Republican outside of Adam Kinzinger and Mitt Romney, one in the House and one in the Senate, who would say, well, this is probably wrong. Every other one of them, every single one would line up and say, we're fine with this.
Yeah, they would, I think.
I mean, it's not our fault.
If there were a better
but
setup.
Hey, it's just the results. We'll go with it.
I guess that's true. And people do mention this all the time. What if Trump and his team weren't just total incompetence?
Yeah.
Would they be more willing to
Adam
line up?
Astor had this really nice tweet historical piece. He's a historian himself. He's from Tennessee, talking about Lamar Alexander stepping down.
Lamar. And
the tradition of partisan Republican that he comes from, which is basically party first, party first, party first.
Okay.
He's a nice guy. He's not the kind of Republican that Trump is, where you get on and you curse everybody out on Twitter and so much. But he's completely and totally partisan. So the idea, for example, that of course he wouldn't vote to convict Trump during a impeachment, no matter what he did.
Yeah.
Trump's a Republican. He's a Republican. Partisan Republicans do this, and that's the Tennessee tradition.
Yeah.
And so, it's not just Tennessee, I'm saying.
Sure.
I'm saying it's the entire party. They're all like that.
You are correct.
Don't give them credit for stuff that, they're trying to dance around. Don't ask me about his tweets. I haven't seen them. I know all about near attendance tweets from 1942. I went all the way back, and I can memorize and recount all of them. But I haven't seen what Trump said.
Yeah.
They are so partisan. They always put party before country. You have to see them that way, whether it's Marco Rubio, whether it's Ted Cruz, or whether they're nicer about it, like Lamar Alexander. They're all the same.
Yeah,
vote them out. You have
really
a chance in January.
If you voted to acquit, I think you tweeted that over the weekend. You voted to acquit. That's the legacy.
Marco said end of an era with Lamar Alexander. It's not the end of an era. He voted to acquit. He's just like the rest of them.
He
different.
embodies the era. Yeah, I guess that's quite true, and it makes a big difference. And for people like Lamar Alexander, who voted to acquit and who said, this is the wrong way to handle his, he said, what Trump did was wrong, but the wrong way to handle.
That sternly worded letter.
Yeah, we'll let the voters handle it, and then it's like, well, the voters handled it, and all you guys still are saying that there's doubt about what to do. It's
exactly
that's your problem.
So it's bullshit, is what it is. Let's call it what it is.
Oh, all right.
But you can be nice about it.
Was that nice? I think so.
Well,
I think everybody should say that.
I'm from New York City. I have to be nice.
Okay.
You can be Minnesota nice.
All right, right, sure. God bless you. It's it's BS.
No. The proper term for Minnesota is, well, that's interesting.
Is that right? Oh, okay. Well, I'm going with this more. It's the
right.
the
That's
southern
like bless
nice.
your heart.
Bless your heart. Yes. That's
or, you know, I got your opinion right here, like we say in New York.
Right. Yeah. That's the same thing. It's true.
It's
just
the same thing.
differently expressed.
Yeah.
All right.
All right.
Very
Take
good.
care. You're on your
Thank
own.
you. We'll do that, and we'll head on to the vaccine story because I know there's lots of questions about that. And we'll see. I saw that story from over the weekend. Everybody getting about half of what they thought they were going to get, and overpromised, just like the Regeneron. Oh, by the way, I'll just tell you before you depart. This week, statistically speaking, we will, as you know, I've been tracking along the way how many people have died and how many people have contracted the virus. Pardon me. Since Trump stood maybe on the White House lawn, maybe in front of a green screen, and promised that everybody was going to get the miracle Regeneron cure that he had gotten. And we're well over 60-something thousand. I think now over 70,000 people who've died since then. But statistically, this week, we're going to hit the point at which, because of the, exponential progression, more people at the end of this week will have contracted COVID since he promised to cure them all instantly than had contracted it to that point in October. From February to October, 7 million or so people contracting the virus or having tested positive, confirmed, reported as having contracted the virus. And we'll have that same number by the end of this week. We'll have contracted it since October 8th, when he promised he was going to cure them all in a minute.
Wow. Well, our helpful friend Daniel Dale over at CNN, I just gave you this link at the bottom.
Oh, okay, let's take a look.
It's going to disappear. A timeline of Trump's claims that COVID-19 will vanish.
Good.
Updated last December 7th, 2020.
Okay.
So he just updated it last night. So he's got the actual quotes. My favorite, of course, was in February when he said, a lot of people think that it goes away in April with the heat.
Oh, yeah.
And, that was the first one.
My new favorite now is the one where he says it's 15 people going to go down to zero, which was also in February, only because this week we also have hit 15 million cases. It didn't go to zero. There were 6 more
when you
zeros
have
he
15
put after
million
the
people
15.
and the 15 million within a couple of days is going to go down to close to zero. That's what he meant, right?
Yeah, I mean,
because with Trump, you always have to talk about what he meant. You can't go by what he says because what he says is so outrageous. Then if you're a commentator, you have to normalize it and make it sound much better than it is because that's your job, right? Yeah. So when he said 15 people, he meant 15 million. And, of course, he was prescient and knew exactly what was going on. And look what a great job he did.
Yeah, I have it under the headline of from April. Jonathan Chait, I think, put it. Trump says, I was right. It is going to go down to zero. It's just going to detour a little bit.
Yeah.
All right, well, vaccine next.
In 2050.
Yeah.
Right.
Well, we'll get around to that.
Okay, so breaking just now, this moment. Georgia Secretary of State announces he will recertify the presidential election results for Joe Biden after 3 counts of the ballot.
Okay. Recertifying?
and Twitter, of course, is responding the way you should respond. What about 5 out of 9?
Yeah. All right. Even the World Series goes to 7, can't we?
Right. There was some movie that did that. I can't even remember now. Okay. Let's do it again.
Did you just tweet that out? I'd like to see this. A recertify. Is there a story that goes with that? I want to see that.
Well, it's just breaking. So this is Brendan Keefe, who is the chief investigator at Atlanta's WXIA 11 Alive, NBC. He's a very good Georgia reporter. Greg Bluestein will have the story eventually in the Atlanta Journal-Constitution, but here's the tweet that comes from.
We'll look at it. Okay.
So let's give it to you.
All right. Oh, thank you. Not the COVID. All right. Okay, I'll take a look at that one. 11 Alive. Well, we used to have that in New York. Why did that tag get stuck on Channel 11 everywhere? That's interesting.
I don't know.
Good formula.
But, not to be too morbid about it, well, we're talking about 11 alive, but 260,000,
There's only 11 dead. Left alive.
Who wants that tag? Which station wants to claim that?
Right. Okay. Well, there's no Channel 270,000, is there?
Yeah. Channel 14, 260,000 dead.
Because it's a shopping network, probably. Okay. All right, Greg, thank you very much. We'll catch up again on Wednesday and, I don't know, see who on the Trump team has got COVID this time and which landscaping place they're going to announce it at. We'll probably have news about Rudy Giuliani and his condition by then. He says he's feeling just great.
My friend Dr. Holly Pinero Jr. brings a little culture into the discussion here. He says, my friend is claiming that Sony's winning due to the high demand and low stock of a PlayStation 5. But I don't know what he's talking about. The only winners are scalpers pricing them at $1,200 to $2,000 online. Sony isn't profiting off of those sales. How are you winning when nobody can buy it?
I don't know.
Now, the PS5 and its availability has been a bit of discussion outside of politics and medicine, but I like to use that as an example of the distribution problem with vaccines.
Okay.
You can't just say, okay, I have it, okay, you want it, okay, here it is. It's not that simple.
Put it on Craigslist.
If it were that simple, everybody could buy a PS5 and you wouldn't have to go to a scalper to get one.
Right. And what temperature do you have to keep a PS5 when you ship it? It's fine. Don't worry about it. And still they can't get those things out.
Right.
Okay.
Anyway, I thought I'd throw that in there.
Sure. Why not? That's a good analogy and one that everybody understands, especially if you're out trying to find one of these things. I'm still looking for a Teddy Ruxpin, so it's not going to work for me.
Before Christmas, huh?
Yeah. Right. Well, it didn't say which Christmas, and also doesn't matter to me. But
yeah, well, not to date myself, but just be careful and don't get rickrolled,
Okay. All right. Thanks, Greg.
Oh, a PS5. I'll click on that. Oh, my God. Who is this guy?
You want a free one. Right. I would probably click on that.
Yeah. Anyway, take care. I'll
good.
talk to you on Wednesday.
Okay. Thanks very much. We'll see you then. We'll see what collapses between now and then, institutionally speaking. Let's see. All right. Well, we have a few seconds here before the music comes up. I can't think of anything to harass you with on your way out the door, so we'll just let you make a peaceful departure. And I will go on to the vaccine story after the break, because there's a lot to it. Just scratch the surface of it. But, yeah, I'm constantly puzzled about how people aren't already outraged. But I guess if it didn't get outraged about not getting the Regeneron, I don't know why people would, suddenly become outraged that they're not getting the vaccine or something. It's our only hope, probably, for rewriting in its entirety the Trump legacy. But, all right. Well, it's a long-term project. We'll be right back. All right. Welcome back now to the Kagro in the Morning Show here on Netroots Radio. I see there's more tweeting about it now. Greg did say that Greg Bluestein would eventually be talking about it, and he is. Story's not ready yet, but here it is, his tweet. It's over again. Georgia Secretary of State Brad Raffensperger says he will announce today that he will recertify the election results for Joe Biden after 3 separate counts of roughly 5 million ballots. I'm just curious about, what do you mean recertify? And I don't know. I worry a little bit whenever I see something like that. There's these stupid legal challenges going on. And I guess if you recertify and it's still before Safe Harbor Day, everything should be fine. But I don't know. To me, I'm a little worried. I don't know if there's any basis for worrying about it. But it bothers me when they are going to recertify and possibly give lunatics the opportunity to say, well, you don't have to recertify anything. The fact that they did tells that there was something wrong with the first one. And we just want to get to the bottom of what that was. The courts won't care in the sense that they'll say, well, if you know or have an idea of what that was, then you better state it. It's not, you can't just say, well, something must have been wrong and it's the court's job to find out. It's your job to tell us and see if you can convince the court that that's true. It's not just, somebody go look. But although that is very much the Trump MO, right? When he doesn't, it's not just a verbal crutch for him. One of his verbal tics is, everything is a tip-off that he's lying, obviously, but in particular, that he doesn't understand the subject, doesn't know what he's talking about well enough to lie effectively about it. He starts this dodge. Take a look at this. Take a look at that. If you look at this, if you look at that. And that means I've just seen things on television or on Twitter that indicate that, if you're willing to believe hard enough in this or that myth, then you might find something there. But I have what it means is Trump saying, I have a cursory understanding from having seen something on Twitter or on television that somebody says it's true. So if you look, because I'm not going to produce the goods for you. I'm not going to give you the so-called evidence. Somebody else should look for it. And if you do, then you will come around to my conclusion. So this sort of thing, I think, if you look hard enough at the reason that they recertified, you'll find that there was some sort of mistake underneath. I don't know. Hopefully it doesn't make any legal difference and we can move on from there. I'm curious to see, though, what do they mean by recertify? Or is he just saying, I'm not recertifying anything, I'm just simply restating that my initial certification was correct. I'd be more comfortable with that, but we'll see what comes of it. All right. I said there was more virus and vaccine news, and there is. From the Washington Post piece that Greg mentioned, Trump's Operation Warp Speed promised a flood of COVID vaccines. Instead, states are expecting a trickle. And again, this is the sort of thing that honestly, at a different time in history or perhaps in a different country, to me, it feels like this is the sort of thing that people would be howling for Trump's blood on this stuff, that he comes out and promises these things. I still think, even in the face of all of his fakery about the elections and the damage that this can do long term, and maybe I'm wrong, and this is the bigger deal, the election fakery, but I still feel like Trump's most depraved lie by far to date has been the lie about the Regeneron, if only because that was never really going to do that much. So maybe it should be outranked by other lies, and maybe the vaccine lie will end up being the bigger one. And for some of the same reasons why I think the Regeneron lie was so big, but it came, I think, arguably at a real serious low point for the country in terms of the way we were dealing with the pandemic. We were in the depths of the outbreak in the upper Midwest, and the numbers were skyrocketing there, and it had clearly moved from the coastal cities where, the rest of the heartland of America had hoped to avoid it, and they still thought, I guess we were seeing our first evidence that it wasn't what they first thought in May and June and earlier, that this was a coastal blue city problem and not going to affect them, and in fact that they were not immune from it, and schools were back in session but teaching remotely in a lot of places, and people were upset with all that. And on top of that, I guess it didn't bother me a great deal when Trump got COVID, but traditionally it would be a low point for the United States when the American president, he doesn't die from it, but it contracts. I was going to say succumbs to the virus, but he didn't succumb to the virus. We don't even know if he really had it at this point because of how stupidly miraculous his recovery appeared to be. But, ordinarily it would be a very bad thing for the president of the United States to be, well, for one thing, it would have been a good thing for him to be fighting the virus, but he wasn't. But he's putting on the show of doing a thing or two about the virus, and then he gets it. That would be very depressing to the country ordinarily. I cheered. I thought he might contract it and die. That would have been a great thing. But he didn't. But this could have been a really, I still think it was still considered a low point for the United States in dealing with this virus. I think we've gotten lower. Our numbers are worse since then, but the president doesn't have it. But then he makes this miraculous recovery, and I don't know whether he was, I don't know whether he was faking it in order to have a miraculous recovery, like as a morale boost. But then he, doubles down on the morale boost by saying, we're all getting sick, but I just got it, and I recovered, and I have found, I call it a cure, and I'm going to give it to all of you. It saved me, and I'm going to make it save you. And he promised the country he would save us all from the coronavirus at the depths of our despair about the coronavirus. And he didn't mean it, even when he said it. And then, of course, he doesn't deliver. And now we find out more people have contracted the virus since he said it than had contracted it in the, whatever it was, 8 months, 7 months prior, which is crazy. And I just can't believe that there weren't people saying, we got to burn down the White House at this point. One of the things I saw over the weekend, I don't know, just an offhand tweet from somebody else saying that the thing that struck them most about the whole thing was that I never thought that people would shrug at 250,000 dead, but they're doing it. We're an amazing bunch of people, we Americans. I guess I shouldn't have been surprised. I always thought that pretty much anything would roll off our backs so long as there was food in the stores, or as I said, 32 flavors at Baskin Robbins. And although I always made fun of things and say there's 32 flavors of bagels at these newfangled bagel places that have all kinds of crazy flavors. But, yeah, I mean, I guess it's true as long as you can shop. And but also, we did come damn close to there not being anything on those shelves. We've experienced some serious shortages in this country. Toilet paper, not the only one. It's still difficult to get paper products, at least where I live, in some of these stores, or at least more difficult than it has been in the past. They have some, but they'll limit your purchases. And there was a time in the grocery store here, I forget what month it was, but yeah, they were telling people, we're limiting you to 2 packages of meat at a time. And there was a run on that, and all sorts of crazy shortages have gone on since then. I was told these things only happened in Russia, but whatever. Anyway, the vaccine thing, another outrageous overpromise by the administration, and I don't think really by the manufacturers. One of the things I took away from my quick read of the Washington Post piece was that apparently somewhere along the line they did say in the small type somewhere, the manufacturers said, yeah, we're not going to have that many doses available right away. But the administration, and maybe more than just the administration, kind of ignored that and said, yay, vaccine, and it's coming. And we all keyed into somebody saying there could be vaccine available for distribution as soon as now, really, December 10th or 12th, end of this week, I guess. Although I suppose if we have a government shutdown, wouldn't that be something if we can't get a continuing resolution in place? And it sounds more and more, we'll talk to Joan about this later, tomorrow, I guess. But sounds more and more like they were trying to do an omnibus, full year spending bill instead of a CR, continuing resolution, but it looks like that's becoming more and more difficult, and they might have to rely on a CR that'll run them for a short period of time so that they can get around to an agreement, maybe, on an omnibus solution. But anyway, that'd be a hell of a thing to have the vaccine, even just a trickle of it, come online and then have a government shutdown get in the way somehow of the initial distribution of even this trickle. But again, here, I just can't believe that there aren't people calling for tearing Donald Trump bodily to pieces in the wake of his promise that the millions and millions of hundreds of millions of doses will be available right away. And they were telling him, no. It was never the case. And he never clarified that. All right, well, let's see what the Washington Post has for us on this one. We said states are expecting a trickle, right? The administration pledged several 100 million doses in 2020, and that's ending soon. It is December. Companies will actually ship about 10% of that. 10%. That's not a lot. Christopher Rowland, Lena Sun, Isaac Stanley Becker, and Carolyn Johnson getting the byline for this piece from Friday, I guess, right? Was that, Saturday. That's the 5th. Federal officials have slashed the amount of coronavirus vaccine they plan to ship to states in December because of constraints on supply, sending local officials into a scramble to adjust vaccination plans and highlighting how early promises of a vast stockpile before the end of 2020 have fallen short. Instead of the delivery of 300 million or so doses, which would have been about enough, almost enough to give everybody in America 1 dose, but I think they understand you have to have 2 doses. So anyway, it will take care of frontline workers and elderly in long-term care facilities, et cetera, et cetera. So instead of the 300 million doses, immediately after emergency use approval and before the end of 2020, as the Trump administration had originally promised, current plans call for availability of around 1/10 of that, or 35 to 40 million doses. I mean, that's a lot of doses and all, but it isn't what you said, not even close to what you said. 2 vaccines from manufacturers Pfizer and Moderna which both use a novel form of mRNA to help trigger immune response, are on the verge of winning Food and Drug Administration clearance this month. And I really thought that would go faster too. But they are being very careful. And I have to allow for that possibility that, it's more important than ever that we be as sure as we can be about the safety and efficacy of this vaccine. There's going to be resistance enough as it is. Approval would cap an unprecedented sprint by government and drug companies to develop, test, and manufacture a defense against the worst pandemic in a century, part of the Operation Warp Speed initiative that promised 6 companies advanced purchase orders totaling $9.3 billion. The central accomplishment that Trump points to in the fight against the coronavirus, and it is going to deliver a tenth of what it said. It's amazing. As planning accelerated for distributing supplies, the government began to further lower expectations. To make sure supplies don't run out and leave some people only partially immunized, because, right? I mean, it's a big problem, not just, well, we ran out, we'll just give out as much as we can until we run out and then start over. You know how vaccination regimens go. You're supposed to get a shot and then, X months, 6 months, 3 months, whatever the number turns out to be. After your first dose, you got to get that second dose or you don't get the full benefit of the vaccine, right? So to make sure supplies don't run out, the government said it would stagger deliveries to ensure that states have enough supply for that second shot, required 21 days later for the Pfizer vaccine, which is expected to be the first to gain approval. And I think they mentioned later on in the story that the approval, the meeting at which they are expected to win approval is set for the 10th. I guess that's Thursday of this week. I was a little concerned about that. Like, couldn't we move that up and have that meeting earlier? But apparently they're waiting for the full vetting of all the reports, and the FDA has people working 24/7 allegedly on going through all the numbers to make sure that when they meet on the 10th, everything is on the up and up for that approval. And okay, that seems to make sense. Although the way they put it in this article, you could have said it that way. We'll get to it in a minute. Lower than expected allocations have caused widespread confusion and concern, as they ought to. In states which are beginning to grasp the level of vaccine scarcity they will confront in the early going of the massive vaccination campaign. This comment from a doctor. Well, all right, we'll throw it in there. Senior health advisor. Anyway, I come from a family of 7 siblings, and best practice was always to have 7 of everything being given out. So what? Said Joe Sullivan, a senior health advisor in Oregon, which is expecting about 35,000 doses in the initial wave from Pfizer. But we know that's not possible in this case. So he told a nice old hoary story about being from a family of 7. Doesn't make a difference. Maine, meanwhile, saw its allotment, we talked about this, fall from a previous estimate of 36,000 to just 12,675 doses. An odd number of doses isn't going to help anybody, but okay. Anyway, this is far less than what is needed for Maine, and Maine's not a big state, and proportionally for other states as well. Governor Janet Mills said at a news conference this past week, that would have been last week, the gap reflects the disconnect between Trump's campaign promises, as well as the optimistic estimates from some drug companies and scientific and manufacturing realities. It's always the logistics. The drop-off is a product of manufacturing problems, bottlenecks in the supply of raw materials, and other hurdles in ramping up clinical trial production of 5 liters of protein-based vaccine at a time, to a commercial scale fermentation. Is it fermented, really? Fermentation of 2,000 liter batches, the companies and the Trump administration said. There were there were a couple of our vaccine candidates that took significantly longer in terms of failed batches, in terms of not having the purity we sought. Paul Mango, Deputy Chief of Staff for Policy at the Department of Health and Human Services, said in an interview. He declined to say which company experienced batch failures. That'll instill confidence. But he goes on to say, we have cracked the code on these things, but we're 2 months behind on some of them. Several states said they were expecting an allocation from Moderna about twice the size of the initial wave from Pfizer, roughly a week later. The flow is expected to accelerate in January and February, but still will not meet the bold predictions of Trump and the leaders of Operation Warp Speed. Pharmaceutical chief Moncef Slaoui, I don't think I ever heard the name, but I've seen it around. But anyway, he said in the White House Rose Garden in May that he was confident, quote, several 100 million doses of vaccine would be ready by the end of December. Meh. Wrong. I need a buzzer for that one. So there you go. And I know Trump is privately consumed with the fact that the vaccine will come out on large scale on Biden's watch. And, I guess he's concerned that Biden will get the credit for it. And he's outright said, the very childish thing to say, don't give him any credit for it. It's all me. Me. I invented it. It's up, And obviously the development of the vaccine has to have, it did fall under the timeline of the Trump administration. Not that I believe he had anything to do with helping it in any way, despite the Operation Warp Speed. But ultimately, in business terms, right, put a businessman in the White House so we know how to get things done, et cetera, and we know how to establish expectations and metrics, right? You failed. You were supposed to deliver several hundred doses by the end of December, and in January we find out we're going to get 1/10 of what you promised. Every effing time with you. Pfizer is expected to win emergency authorization, here's the part, for its vaccine soon after an FDA advisory committee meets on December 10th, right? Again, here's where I was like, couldn't they meet on the 9th or 8th or even the 7th? It's Monday. Or, take some time out on a Sunday, meet on the 6th. Why not? Do it as soon as possible. But then I'm assured that this is because the 10th is the earliest that they were told that they could schedule it and have a full vetted report to look at and base their decision on. I have to assume that's true. Otherwise, well, I don't know. What can I tell you? I'd say otherwise we ought to be furious and with these people as well. But I don't know. We're in furious mode, right? We were supposed to have several 100 million. We're going to have 1/10 of that, not this month, but next month. Maybe you screwed this up too. I'm not really sure. But people say I should be giving them leeway on this thing. And so instead, I'll be mad about the way it's put in this article. Pfizer is expected to win emergency authorization for its vaccine soon after an FDA advisory committee meets on December 10th. To me, I would say, and the advisory committee emergency authorization for Pfizer's vaccine will come as soon as the FDA advisory committee meets. They have scheduled their meeting currently for December 10th, the soonest moment at which the full analysis will be done so that they could approve it as soon as humanly possible. That's the sentence I was looking for. In November, the company cut its manufacturing projection for 2020 from 100 million doses to 50 million doses. It said it remains on track to produce 1.3 billion doses in 2021. But again, they cut their projection in half, and I don't remember anybody saying, hey, they cut their projection in half. We should give a second look at this. I mean, cutting it in half is a big deal. And now it's only going to be 1/10. The company's lower estimate got little notice at the time, tucked at the bottom of a November 9th news release announcing the stunning news that its vaccine was more than 90% effective. That one we remember, right? That part of it we remember. The news buoyed stock markets, we remember that as well, and triggered optimism that a solution to the pandemic was in sight. Turns out not so much. Or at least not as quickly as we thought. As Pfizer began large-scale production, the company said, it encountered difficulties procuring sufficient amounts of raw ingredients. I can't believe this wasn't baked into the thinking. A number of specialized materials are required to create the vaccine, including nucleotides, the building blocks of the mRNA. And as you know, all the supermarkets are out of nucleotides. I don't know. Bringing it all together in a first-time, very large-scale operation is no simple feat. No. This, according to company spokeswoman Amy Rose. And that's not no, that's the other. It's not Amy Rose. I'm thinking, what's the name of the abortion protester woman? Something Rose. All right. Well, anyway, it's as complicated as the research and development piece. I'm sure it is. Moderna, a Massachusetts biotech company that has never before had a product on the market. Oh, I did not know that. Did not make early public predictions of how much of its mRNA vaccine it would produce by the end of 2020. The company said it is now on track to have 20 million doses available in December and between 500 million to 1 billion available by the end of 2021. End of 2021. As with Pfizer, Moderna's vaccine is a 2-shot regimen. The swing factor between 500 million and 1 billion doses is raw materials. Moderna chief executive Stephanie Bancel said in an interview, adding that as the company massively ramped up its production by a factor of 1,000 this year, the demand strained its supply chain. Some of our suppliers were not ready for that, of course, Bancel said. And I don't know whether they were ever going to get ready, but I don't know. I think I've heard enough discussion about supply chain for things like this that I just can't believe that there weren't people out there. Maybe they didn't have the microphones and the megaphones available to them, and the company didn't want them to have them available to them either. But somebody knew, I've been buying, for Moderna, as they said, we just read, right? Never before had a product on the market. Okay, so can you put 1 billion of these things on the market by the end of next year? Yes. Really? All right. I mean, you have a handle on this? Like, how much, how often do you buy your supplies for making your vaccines and you find out there's not quite enough or anything like that? Well, you know what? I don't know, because we don't actually have any product on the market ever. Wow. I mean, how about you guys at Pfizer, though? You definitely have things on the market. I've definitely seen them. I know you make things. Have you asked your suppliers, do you have enough of this for me to make 1 billion of these? Because almost, I don't know what business you're in. Doesn't matter, really, quite honestly. But, I mean, try it. Call your suppliers, whatever they may be. Now, whatever analogy you might have to draw in your line of work to your suppliers, and say, the things I buy from you, or whatever it is, right? You know, I make spaghetti and meatballs every week for the kids. If I go to the supermarket today and say, I need to scale up production, they will say, I don't know what the hell you're talking about. But, okay, no, I need to scale up production. I make meatballs each week for the kids. I usually buy about 1.25 pounds. There's packages you make of the ground beef. It's about 1.25 pounds. I need 1 billion pounds. Can I get that? You know what? I'll have to get back to you on that one. I don't think so. I mean, it's possible. There are 1 billion pounds of meat out there. I don't know how I would get it all, but it's available. I suppose we could try it. I don't know if we could get it all here. I don't know if you could take it home. I don't know where you would put it. I don't think you could make that many meatballs. That's my problem. Can I get the 1 billion pounds of meat? It seems like something that would have put up, to me, that gets a red flag. So, all right, fine. They did say, well, we can't make 1 billion. Or we can't make the 100 million we thought we would make by the end of the month. We'll make 50 million instead. I don't know. To me, it's like, I can't believe we're just discovering this now. But they say they put it in at least some of this stuff, warning in small type at the bottom of their press release. And it was our fault. We didn't see it the first time. All right. Let's go back to the end of the story here. Anyway, like they said, they're shocked to announce that, well, supply chain, it's a tough thing. Some of our suppliers weren't ready to help us make 1 billion units. Moderna's vaccine supply chain depends critically on the availability and high quality of each component, including the lipids used to encapsulate the mRNA, bags and laboratory equipment used in production, bags, okay, and chemical components of the mRNA itself and enzymes. If one ingredient is missing, we have to wait, Bancel said, which seems like an important thing when you want to make 1 billion of anything. AstraZeneca said earlier in the year that it would begin delivering the first of 300 million doses in viral vector vaccine to the United States in September. An ambitious prediction that passed unfulfilled. You may have noticed it's past September now. AstraZeneca declined to comment The other companies have declined to say how much vaccine they expect to have available or won't report the phase 3 clinical data until later in 2021. So just again, as Trump goes out the door and says, give me the credit, Biden shouldn't get any of the credit. I did this great thing, warp speed, need to have a businessman in the White House. We've got to make great deals. Remember, we just read in this thing, what do we make? Deals with like 9 manufacturers, $9.3 billion for pre-purchases. Has anybody delivered on time yet? That's a tough thing, and I didn't think anybody really was going to, but 9 misses is a lot. Hi everybody, it's me, David. Let's change things up from the old fundraising pitch for just a minute and talk instead about how you can be a part of our show. If you've got a smartphone or any other electronic recording device, why not sit down and record a segment for us? Read us an important article and give us your take. Read one of your own original essays, or even just give us your commentary on something you'd like to share that's important to you. Then send the file to me at kagrox@gmail.com and I'll try and work it into the show. Short segments, a few minutes in length, are easiest to fit in. And of course, I can't always guarantee that I'll be able to play everything, but if you've ever shouted at your radio or TV about something you wish was being covered, here's your chance to change that. Make the show your own. Send your submissions to me at kagrox@gmail.com. All right, welcome back now to the Kagro in the Morning Show here on Netroots Radio. Let's see if we can finish up with the vaccine thing. I mean, that is extraordinarily important. There are a million things that are huge stories that we haven't gotten to yet, but I don't know what's more important than this story, quite honestly, except for the fact that they're trying to steal the election and they seem to be failing at it, but we all still have to wait and see what happens. At least, after tomorrow, after Safe Harbor Day. Whether anybody says, courts, please overturn that whole Safe Harbor thing, or let's challenge the electoral count on January 6th. That still seems to be in the works, thanks to Mo Brooks and other idiots, and I guess more people joining that effort, including the 2 QAnon loons that we just recently saw elected to Congress, and who plan to show up armed as well, so that should be interesting. But for the moment, let's finish up on this. Americans and state officials are already having to adjust their expectations to a slower rollout of vaccines. Operation Warp Speed officials said that within 24 hours of the Pfizer vaccine winning clearance, and again, that's on Thursday, is what's expected, the government would begin releasing 6.4 million doses in 2 stages, enough for the first shot, followed 3 weeks later by enough for the second shot. So I guess they're saying within 24 hours of Thursday's meeting, 6.4 million people distributed out somewhere, but among the 330 million of us, will get their first shot, and probably followed 3 weeks later, there will be enough to give them their second shots. That's what they're saying. Once the Moderna vaccine is authorized, perhaps a week after Pfizer's, 12.5 million doses would begin to be released under a similar schedule. But, they've failed to meet their schedules before. But okay. Army General Gustav Perna, the logistical chief of Operation Warp Speed, has said those initial bursts of vaccine would be followed by a weekly cadence of shipments. Health officials in numerous states said they expected to vaccinate fewer people than they had originally anticipated with the first wave of the Pfizer vaccine. I just want to make mention of the fact, things happen, but I want to make mention of the fact that the stupid overpromising is not just disappointing, but a lot of hours of some very important people who have some very important stuff to do in every state have just been burned, and they have to do their work all over again. They planned for the distribution of a certain number of units of this vaccine based on the assurances that they got from manufacturers and Operation Warp Speed people, and they, I'm sure, knocked themselves out planning based on those numbers, and then days before they expected to be distributing the stuff, they get, I don't know whether they got a call or they read in the Washington Post or they hear it on Twitter, what? That, all the work is got to be done all over again. Happy holidays. But we don't say that. Thank God we say Merry Christmas when we call them and tell them we burned all their work. Nothing like burning the work of logistics people and epidemiologists in the middle of a pandemic. All right, so let's see. Health officials in numerous states said they expected to vaccinate fewer people, right, with the first wave of Pfizer vaccine. The sharp decrease in expected doses reoriented their planning in the final stages of preparation for a logistical ordeal as complex as a military campaign. Some of the calculations were technical, whether to send the shots to an even narrower set of hospitals or to include the same number of facilities but restrict immunization to the most at-risk healthcare workers. Other decisions involved more fundamental questions of access and how to balance public awareness with limited supply. In Maine, the current proposed allotment would barely enable us to vaccinate emergency department and ICU frontline staff, said Nirav Shah, director of Maine's Center for Disease Control and Prevention and president-elect of the Association of State and Territorial Health Officials. Maine has about 6,000 emergency department and intensive care frontline staff who would meet the criteria to be vaccinated in the initial round, state officials said. State and local officials said they always expected vaccine supply would be limited in the early weeks after authorization, but the increased constraints are compounding the allocation and implementation challenges of getting doses to people in the first priority groups, said Jeff Duchin, D-U-C-H-I-N, a top official at the Seattle and King County Health Department. We will need to make decisions on where to send a very limited supply initially that will leave many unsatisfied until the number of the supply improves to meet demand. For example, is it preferable to give more sites a smaller number of doses or a few sites more doses when all serve people in that first tier to be offered vaccine? That's a good question. A CDC advisory committee recommended this past week that healthcare personnel and residents of long-term care facilities be the first to get the limited doses once a vaccine is authorized. Because of the limited supply, the advisory committee's work group suggested a standardized approach for healthcare systems to prioritize their personnel even further. They could stagger vaccinations by individual unit, such as emergency departments, and prioritize those with direct patient contact and those who handle infectious material. Few officials seem to know exactly why they are receiving fewer doses. We didn't make them. That's the answer. There has been some lack of clarity in terms of what states are going to get, said Rachel Levine, Pennsylvania's health secretary and president of the State Health Officials Association. There's like 10 of these associations, I guess. Everybody's a president, like getting a trophy. We're not crystal clear. The initial supply will not even touch all of our hospitals, said Mandy Cohen, secretary of the North Carolina Department of Health and Human Services. We knew this was going to be a process, and we've tried to set expectations on the front end. The government's decision to hold back the booster shot, Cohen said, adds a new layer of complexity. I think one of the hardest pieces of this is the matching of that first dose to the second dose and getting that timing exactly right, she said. In the trial setting, when Pfizer and Moderna did that, it's a very controlled setting. We don't have data to say what happens if you come in on day 22. We'll be working very hard to follow the protocols. Right? You can wish it all you want. Somebody's going to miss day 21. Randall Williams, Missouri's health director, said he's confident the state will be able to complete the initial phase of immunization by early in the new year. A sharp drop-off in the initial allocation from Pfizer, from 180,000 to 51,000 in Missouri's case, just means the doses will be more spaced out through the first month rather than arriving immediately after the FDA grants approval, Williams said. It's a good guess, maybe. The shots will even be sufficient to cover residents of long-term care facilities, whom he had not originally factored into planning for the first priority group, really. In some ways, this puts us ahead of where we thought we were going to be, Williams said. I don't really know what the hell he's talking about there, but okay. Federal officials, acclaiming the expected arrival of vaccines, are also begging people to be patient. We will have more and more people getting vaccinated, said Admiral Brett Giroir, remember him, the Assistant Secretary of Health and Human Services, during a visit Wednesday to Louisiana, saying most Americans might have to wait until May or June. Experts agreed the administration's plan to pay companies billions of dollars in advance to spur manufacturing in parallel to the initiation of clinical trials, a strategy never attempted on such a massive scale, must still be considered a success. The advance payments eliminated or reduced financial risk for the companies, which have raced to ramp up production of doses that are still in the pipeline, if coming slower than originally pledged. They have done better than I could have imagined they could have done, said Barry Bloom, a professor and expert in immunology and infectious diseases at the Harvard T.H. Chan School of Public Health. Each of the coronavirus vaccine manufacturers contracted by the government, with the exception of Pfizer, will get paid for delivery stockpiles of vaccines even if they fail to win emergency authorization, according to Operation Warp Speed. Okay. Together, the six received advanced purchase orders of $9.3 billion, according to a tally by analysts at the Wall Street firm Bernstein. That's the name of the firm. That's it. Some received additional subsidies of hundreds of millions of dollars for research and development. This money certainly has been important in helping these companies build out their manufacturing capacity ahead of time. It's just that it's really hard to do so, said Rachel Sachs, a law professor and specialist in pharmaceutical pricing at Washington University in St. Louis. All right, that's the end of the article. Finally, we got to the end of this thing. So what does it mean? Still means that most of us at the moment say they'll have to wait until May or June before we see our first doses. But given that everybody else who was told they'd see them in December won't see them until January, and only half of the people who thought they were going to get it in January are actually going to get it, I have questions. And now I have more questions about Moderna. And it's really hard to build out manufacturing and distribution channels at that scale, but especially if you've never brought anything to market before. That seems like a tall order to me. All right. Shift in focus, as important as that is. Well, actually, you know what? We might as well just continue on because there's a couple other things that I wanted to add to this. One was, I think, directly related to the vaccine. I thought I would bring you this. I saw a tweet thread this morning. I don't know the person, but blue check mark, so you got to believe in that. Professor Peter Hotez, I don't know how he pronounces it, Hotez, a doctor, and where is he working here? Vaccine scientist, pediatrician, author, professor, dean, he's got it all. Texas Children's Hospital, I guess, and university professor at Baylor University, has this to say. A 4-part tweet thread and then connected to a New York Times article, I think previously mentioned by Greg. But let's see. My comments this morning with, whoever it was, okay, now I have the name rather than the Twitter handle. Apurva Mandavili, who's a reporter for the New York Times, and I guess put together this linked piece here in his first tweet. My comments this morning with her stated how the stars would need to align in order to meet Operation Warp Speed projections of vaccinating the U.S. population and ultimately interrupting virus transmission. So he's throwing a little bit of shade on the possibility that this vaccine actually fixes the problem. And I guess we ought to look at, or at least I'll refer you to, that New York Times article. I'll include it in the roundup. He goes on to say in his second tweet here, we have two performance hopes or expectations for the COVID-19 vaccines. And this is something we really need to get used to. It's not just like everybody gets the shot or 2 shots and then, boom, we're done, because it fixes everything and you're immune from everything. This is what they were hoping to do with the vaccine. 1, to keep you and your family out of the hospital or ICU and save your life, decrease the virulence of the virus. You won't get as sick. It might not prevent you from getting everything or anything at all, but it should keep you out of the hospital. That's the chief aim. Not necessarily total immunity to everything. And so far, this seems to be working. It seems to be happening as planned. But also, the second goal or performance hope for the vaccine was if enough people are vaccinated, then virus transmission stops. We're not sure that that's going to happen just yet. The second bar is, he says, a high one, requiring the following stars to align. 1, the vaccine can also halt virus shedding and asymptomatic transmission. And we haven't established that yet. There's some studies planned. 2, we estimated with modelers that 60 to 80% of the U.S. population could get vaccinated. Now, to reach 60 to 80%, we'll need 1, additional vaccines beyond mRNA, because he's saying, I don't think mRNA alone will get us there. And 2, vaccinate adolescents and kids. And 3, launch an effective national communications strategy. 4, confront and dismantle anti-vaccine aggression. All possible with political will, but I guess all question marks. And he's linking here to the Times article, Trump officials push ambitious vaccine timeline as California locks down. As cases surge and hospital beds fill up, federal officials said a vaccine could be distributed to as many as 24 million people by mid-January. And we'll just let you read through this story because I want to make some shift to some other stories as well. But yeah, basically, it's good to keep up with the details and nuance that the doctors are giving us about what vaccines are, how they work, whether they'll get to you, and what their real hopes for the vaccine are. It's not necessarily that, as soon as they start giving out the vaccine, well, it's certainly not the case that everybody can then go take their masks off and eat in restaurants and get together again. That's not what it's all about. All right, there's one other thing I think I wanted to throw out there with respect to the virus. And just to let you know that this was going on, I guess I saw a tweet from another person I don't know but has the blue check mark, a journalist from, journalist, author, and Germany correspondent for the Wall Street Journal. And how would we pronounce his name? Bojan? I'm guessing Bojan. Bojan Panchevsky. I'm going to guess at the pronunciation of Pancevski. And he has this to say: the Swedish COVID-19 experiment is over. I was wondering whatever happened with them. After a severe second coronavirus wave, which authorities said wouldn't happen, the government imposed some mandatory restrictions to curb hospitalizations and deaths. His report in full is in the Wall Street Journal, but I can't read it there. But they go under the headline, anyway, of long a holdout from COVID-19 restrictions, Sweden ends its pandemic experiment. Their idea of just relying on a lot of people or everybody to do the right thing because they're good Swedes apparently has not worked out. After a surge in COVID-19 infections led to rising hospitalizations and deaths, Sweden has abandoned its attempt, unique among Western nations, to combat the pandemic through voluntary measures alone, with total COVID-19 related deaths reaching almost 700 per million inhabitants. Infections growing exponentially and hospital wards filling up, the government had to shift. Last week, Sweden's total coronavirus death count crossed 7,000. Neighboring Denmark, Finland, and Norway, all similarly sized countries, have recorded since the beginning of the pandemic 878, 415, and 354 deaths, respectively. But not Sweden. They have 20 times as many, or 10 times as many as Denmark. Okay, let's see. The officials in Sweden said lockdowns were unsustainable and unnecessary initially. That was their chief epidemiologist, I think. Tegnell was his last name. So they said lockdowns were unsustainable and necessary, they discouraged mask wearing, apparently, as the European Centre for Disease Prevention and Control, the EU agency whose headquarters are located near his offices, recommends wearing them. But he says, don't. So he kind of went the other way on that one. He predicted that Swedes would gradually build immunity to the virus through controlled exposure, that vaccines would take longer than expected to develop, and that death rates across the West would converge. Well, I guess it didn't exactly go the way he planned. Instead, a coronavirus vaccine was authorized last week. Sweden's death rate remains an outlier among its neighbors, and Tegnell acknowledged in late November that the new surge in infections showed that there was no sign of herd immunity, which really math could have told you. Sweden's laissez-faire pandemic strategy has failed to deliver the economic benefits its proponents had predicted in the first half of the year. And I guess this is why we all paid attention to Sweden in the first place. Republicans who were anti-lockdown, anti-mask, blah, 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 said, well, all this may be true. We may all get sick and die. But the economy has to be saved. And look how Sweden is doing with its economy. Well, turns out they didn't get much out of that one. Failed to deliver the economic benefits its proponents had predicted. In the first half of the year, GDP fell by 8.5%, and unemployment is projected to rise to nearly 10% in the beginning of 2021. Despite the lack of lockdown, Sweden's economic performance has not been better than that of its neighbors. Anders Tegnell, there's the first name on the man, the face of Sweden's pandemic management, remains hugely popular despite his wrong predictions in opposition to masks. So go figure. We have the same problem here, except our guy isn't hugely popular. We just can't believe that he's popular at all. The fact that 70-something million people voted for him is kind of a disappointment. But anyway, people have tattooed his visage, made it into Christmas decorations, and baked life-size gingerbread cakes in his image. Wow. Well, I wouldn't mind doing that and burning them, but okay. I guess 7,000 deaths, though, doesn't outrage people in Sweden the same way. 280,000 would here in the United States, but whatever. Despite the high infection and mortality rates, Sweden is refusing to mandate masks still. EU's CDC has recommended wearing them, as we know, as does the CDC in the U.S. and the World Health Organization, and Sweden's own institute that awards the Nobel Prize, as a matter of fact. So I guess he won't be getting that. Attention has been focused on Sweden, but its Nordic neighbors, Norway and Finland in particular, have had much greater success while enjoying near equal freedoms, with bars and restaurants open. Interesting. One major difference, they have much stricter border controls. Interesting that we have not implemented those here, given what a fan of border controls our president is. Authorities chose a strategy totally different from the rest of Europe, and because of it, the country has suffered a lot in the first wave. We have no idea how they failed to predict the second wave. We don't like to say that Sweden has been the black sheep, but it has definitely been the different sheep. Sweden registered more COVID-19 deaths last week than Norway has had during the whole pandemic. And there's quite a lag, of course, as you know, in reporting coronavirus deaths anywhere, but apparently particularly in Sweden. So there you go. Just wanted to bring you up to speed on that one. So thanks to the Wall Street Journal for that report, even though I didn't get to read the report. Thank you for making the basic information in the report available through Twitter. I appreciate it. Okay. There's more. And it's on other subjects. And I told you we might get to this one, so let's throw this one in there. Jenna Ellis, fake lawyer. Sort of. I mean, real lawyer, fake constitutional lawyer, certainly. The Daily Mail did their own piece on this thing, which they ran under the headline of Trump lawyer was fired as prosecutor and hasn't paid bar fees. I'm sure that's the much more exciting and titillating tale. The New York Times took a different approach, and I thought really encapsulated things nicely in a paragraph I think we probably will get to if we just read straight down under the headline, How is Trump's lawyer Jenna Ellis elite strike force material? Well, she's not. She bills herself as a constitutional law attorney, which isn't really even a thing. Like, you can be a constitutional law professor or constitutional law expert. I've seen people say things like that about, like, who is it? Ann Coulter likes to say she's a constitutional law expert. Or maybe she says constitutional law attorney, and Ellis is just borrowing it. Her experience doesn't align with the sort of lawyer she plays on TV. That's the upshot of this piece by Jeremy Peters and Alan Feuer. I hope I'm pronouncing his name correctly. Jenna Ellis broke into the legal profession in 2012 as a deputy district attorney in Weld County, Colorado, a largely rural area that would soon make headlines for a failed attempt to secede from the rest of the state because some residents resented the growing dominance of more liberal communities to the south, like Denver. Ms. Ellis prosecuted crimes like theft and assault, serious enough, but felonies of a different magnitude, let's say, though, from the claims of sweeping fraud and criminal conspiracy that she makes today as a top lawyer to President Trump. It wasn't long before she parlayed her law degree, which she does have, and experience as a prosecutor, which is a tiny bit of, into jobs that thrust her beyond her corner of the state. She took a position with James Dobson, the evangelical heavyweight, joined the faculty at Colorado Christian University, and started appearing on Denver radio as a legal commentator. And that's all it takes in Donald Trump world. By late 2018, regular viewers of cable news would come to know Ms. Ellis as a, quote, constitutional law attorney, her preferred title, who aggressively came to Mr. Trump's defense as he faced investigation and impeachment. That's how she talked her way into his circle. But a review of her professional history, as well as interviews with more than a half dozen lawyers who have worked with her, show that Ms. Ellis, 36, is not the seasoned constitutional law expert she plays on TV, and doesn't really even play convincingly. In many ways, and this is the paragraph you need to hear, in many ways, that makes her ideal for the role she has now fashioned for herself. She is a star player in the president's theater of grievance and denial, whose lack of relevant experience with the legal questions at hand has had no apparent bearing on her ability to present herself as someone of great authority. That's perfect. Since she graduated from law school in 2011, by the way, nothing in her record in the courtroom, limited mostly to appearances in a state court as a prosecutor or as counsel for clients charged with assault, prostitution, theft, and domestic abuse, shows any time spent litigating election law cases. And those are complicated and of a different sort. They really are. Anyway, she holds herself out as an expert on the Constitution based on, what? Were you ever wondering? Based on her self-published book and her teaching of pre-law classes to undergraduates. Remember, she was a professor of legal studies, not a law professor at a law school, but undergraduate legal studies at Colorado Christian University, which I'm sure is a fine place, but it's not exactly top tier, and they don't have a law school. Legal studies. It's an undergraduate pursuit, but that's all. That doesn't make you a constitutional law professor. She has never appeared in federal district or circuit court, where most constitutional matters are considered, according to national databases of federal cases, and does not appear to have played a major role in any cases beyond her criminal and civil work in Colorado. On paper, the Trump campaign calls her a senior legal advisor. She has recently appeared alongside Rudy Giuliani and other Trump lawyers as he farted, among other things, a group Ms. Ellis described as an elite strike force team, at public hearings where she amplified the president's false claims of widespread voter fraud. But I think this is key too. Ms. Ellis's work, though, appears to be largely in a public relations capacity. The Trump campaign and its supporters have so far filed about 50 election-related lawsuits. She has not signed her name or appeared in court to argue a single one. And that may have something to do with, as the Daily Mail pointed out, she's not a member of the bar anywhere. In a written statement responding to questions about her record, Ms. Ellis described herself as, quote, a highly experienced and highly qualified attorney and expert in my field. Any assertions to the contrary, she says, cast me in a false light. The Trump campaign provided the name of one federal case, in which it said Ms. Ellis had participated in 2012 when she was a year out of law school. But guess what? This is weird too. Her name is not among the lawyers listed in the decision. And the case also, as it happens, wasn't even heard in regular federal court, but rather in an administrative tribunal. Well, that's the practice of law, but your name's not on the brief and it's not on the decision. Nothing. It's been a month since Election Day, and in the weeks since, Mr. Trump has refused to bow to the reality of his defeat. You know all about that. His fruitless attempts to persuade federal judges and state officials to undo the results have introduced the nation to a once obscure cast of lawyers, legislators, and local elections commissioners. Ms. Ellis is a natural in her newly prominent role. It's just that she doesn't belong there. And this article goes on to say they talked to a number of lawyers who have worked with her in the past, some of whom they've cooperated on cases, and they've fired her from those cases because she was just incompetent and couldn't hold up her end of the bargain. Others said, well, we finished our work together, but she's not the sort of person I would have held out as, let's say, a constitutional law expert. She just doesn't have that experience. But she self-published a book about how America had lost its way under its abandonment of her idea of what the Constitution should be, and that was enough to get her a teaching gig at Colorado Christian University. Wow. Big prompts there.
From netrootsradio.com, you have been listening to Kagro in the Morning with David Waldman.
All right. Well, you know we've missed a lot by taking these deep dives into all the subjects we did spend time on, and so that's the reason you need to stay tuned for Justice Putnam and the West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy coming up next. And did I say that correctly? I mean, I know the name, right? Cookbook and Speakeasy. Stay tuned. He'll say it right, even if I can't. We'll see you tomorrow.